he invited me to hike Utah's 3 tallest peaks in one day.
In a day.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm in. Like, I love to climb mountains. All of those 3 mountains are all connected, kind of in a similar ridge line. And
Okay.
and so we're driving out there, and he says, oh, by the way, there will be a journalist and a photographer from the Deseret News joining us because nobody's ever done this before. And I'm like, okay, well, didn't know that, but that's fine, whatever. I don't care. I just want to climb some mountains. And so we get out there, and it turns out we had an advanced base camp. We didn't do it from the car. So we had this kind of advanced base camp at Dollar Lake. We all set out, the 4 of us, to do this thing. And me and the photographer were the only 2 to finish. And as is often the case in journalism, photographers do not want to be mentioned in a byline. They don't want to be part of the story. They're just the eye behind the lens. So, needless to say, the Deseret News runs a 3-page, full color, full page article on me doing this thing that they coined the Utah Triple Crown.
This is your host, Brendan, and you're listening to the Ordinary to Ultra podcast. Each episode, I bring in an ultra runner and ask them about their journey to their first ultramarathon, or their first time running a new ultra distance. We'll dive into why they started running in the first place, why they decided to run an ultra, the obstacles they encountered, and what it took to get to the finish line and beyond. Hey, Craig, thanks for being here today, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Sweet, man. I'm curious, what have you been doing in the mountains lately? I know it's been snowing a lot here in Utah, but so you might not be running, but I don't know. What are you?
No. Running season doesn't end when the snow comes.
Oh, good.
You just have different attire. I mean, a week ago I was on Catalina Island running a 50K in California. That's a whole other thing, which did not involve snow. But the week before, the week before that, I was on Mount Olympus. And I climbed Mount Olympus, trudging through the snow. And the day before that, I was skiing. So mountain season never stops when you live in the Wasatch.
That's a nice thing. When you say you went up Mount Olympus, were you backcountry skiing that day, or were you actually like going up?
Yeah, hiking and running. Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah. I mean, it's a regular cadence this time of year, because it gets tracked out so fast that you can, it's one of the bigger mountains. It's 4,000 feet of gain in 4 miles. And you can, the fact that it gets tracked out, usually within 24 hours of a big storm, you can still get in some good miles and a bunch of vert. So
that's sick. That is sick, man. There's been some good skiing lately and some good running. I've got a marathon in 2 weeks here, so I'm also just getting out there, even though it was snowing pretty good today.
Yeah, good for you. Where's the marathon?
Doing the Sun Marathon. It's down in St. George area, southern Utah. Okay. But not quite St. George. It's Santa Clara. It's just northwest, I think, of St. George.
Santa Clara. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
cool. That'll be fun.
Good for you.
Thank you. So I'd like to go into your past now, Craig. I'd like to know what got you running in the first place.
Yeah, so that's an interesting story because I hated running my entire life. Unless I had a ball in my hand, the idea of running was abhorrent to me. And when I was 36 years old, my wife had been pushing me for a while that I needed to run to get cardio because she liked to run, and that was her way of in maintaining her cardio. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm a religious rock climber. I would train 6 days a week at that time. And then I was climbing 1 to 2 mountains a month. And I'm like, I think my cardio is pretty good. And she's like, well, no, you're getting old. It's like, that's 36. Don't tell me I'm getting old.
That's terrible.
Yeah. So I went out for a run, and yeah, this is kind of amazing, actually. I went out for a run, and I hated it. It was horrible. Just ran 3 miles on the road, thought I was going to die. Yeah. And my brother gave me some of the best advice I ever heard. He said, when you can run 3 miles without feeling like you're going to die, you'll start to love running. And when you can run 6 miles, you'll be addicted. And he was cool. Spot on. I hit that 6 mile mark, and I was like, I'm in. At the same time, I was dabbling in this idea of like trail running, just because I live on the Wasatch Front in Salt Lake City. And it's so accessible, and I was already connected to the mountains through rock climbing and mountain biking and skiing. Mm-hmm. And so I was spending a lot of time on the trails, and I had a friend approached me. This was in 2008. And he said, hey, let's go hike Kings Peak, tallest mountain in Utah, 13,528 feet. Let's hike Kings Peak and back in a day, which if you do that, it's a marathon. If you there's a certain route, it is actually 26.2 miles. It's insane.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, It's amazing. And so we hiked it, thinking like we were amazing, because we had done this like thing in a day that most people do over 3 days. I mean, don't get me wrong. It took us 13 and a half hours. It was a death march for the last 6 to 7 miles. It was horrible. And we got back to the trailhead, and there was a trail register there. And in the register, we had been looking to see how many other people had done this adventure in a day. And we came across the name of this guy, and his name was, no lie, Davy Crockett.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. And all it said in there was, Davy Crockett completed the Utah Triple Crown. I'm going to give you way more backstory than you want to hear. Completed the Utah Triple Crown, car to car, 38 miles in he did in 12 hours. And I'm thinking, first of all, this is really weird because, what I immediately knew what the Utah Triple Crown was.
Yeah. What?
Well, this is the backstory you probably didn't want to hear. In 2001, no, maybe 2002 or 2003. One of my closest friends at the time, who was still one of my closest friends and running partner and running buddy, and we have done more adventures than I could ever talk about, Scott Wiesman. He invited me to attempt. This is again 2000. Let's just go with 2003. He invited me to hike Utah's 3 tallest peaks in one day.
In a day. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm in. I love to climb mountains. All of those 3 mountains are all connected, kind of in a similar ridge line. And
okay.
And so we're driving out there, and he says, oh, by the way, there will be a journalist and a photographer from the Deseret News joining us, because nobody's ever done this before. And I'm like, okay, well, didn't know that, but that's fine, whatever. I don't care. I just want to climb some mountains. And so we get out there, and it turns out we had an advanced base camp. We didn't do it from the car. So we had this kind of advanced base camp at Dollar Lake. We all set out, the 4 of us, to do this thing. And me and the photographer were the only 2 to finish. And as is often the case in journalism, photographers do not want to be mentioned in a byline. They don't want to be part of the story. They're just the eye behind the lens. So, needless to say, the Deseret News runs a 3-page 3-page, full page article on me doing this thing that they coined the Utah Triple Crown. I still have the newspaper. And then, no, this, you know what, not, this was in 2001. Fast forward 7 years, and I have forgotten all about this.
Yeah.
Didn't even know. Little did I know that in the the peak bagging and hiking circles, this quote unquote Utah Triple Crown had become a buzzword that people were talking about and were super interested in. I had no clue because I didn't care. I was just like, cool day in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And then to find out this character, Davy Crockett, it did it car to car. So he one up me.
Yeah. Okay.
In roughly the same amount of time, but instead of, my route was maybe like 10, 12 miles. His was 38, and he did it in the same amount of time, and he ran most of it. And so I'm a dabbling, it's now 2008. I'm a dabbling runner. I got this crazy dude, Davy Crockett, who does this on his 50th birthday. And I, like any normal, responsible adult, I internet stalked him. And
I will find you, Davy Crockett.
I did. I found his blog. And messaged him because he had done a write-up on this, him doing the Triple Crown. I messaged him, like, hey man, like, I'm the guy. And he even like linked to my Deseret News article on the website. And I'm just like, my mind's blown. And so I reach out to him like, hey man, that's me. Like, I'm the guy in that article. What you did is insane. And he responds, he's like, hey, that's awesome. We should go for a run. And I'm like, no. I run like 6 miles on the road. I'm stalking your blog. You run 100-mile races. And that was it. Like, that was September 2008. I got injured. Like, I got sick. I had to start all over again, January 2009. So that's where I say my running career started, was in 2009.
Okay.
And he became my running mentor.
Okay.
And I ran my first ultra marathon with him, which was an adventure run. It wasn't even a race. And to this day, he's a very good friend. And he makes everything that we will talk about tonight pales in comparison to what he has accomplished. The guy's done 100-mile races or runs.
Okay, so you're telling me I need to get Davy Crockett on here in the next few months.
Yeah, I mean, I'll connect you. I mean, the guy's amazing. He also has written.
That's so cool.
He has his own podcast, which is called The History of Ultra Running, and he's written 3 books on it. They're just short books that you can get on Amazon, and it's The History of Ultra Running, and it's amazing. He's a historian at heart. He's also the race director of the Pony Express 150-mile race. And he's also written 3 books on the history of the Pony Express Trail.
That is so cool. And
Yeah.
you met this guy because he one-upped you in that Triple Crown.
Yeah.
And then you reached out to him.
Yeah.
No. Yes.
Yeah, straight up stalked him.
And he became that is such a cool story.
And now he's a great friend. He's one of the most amazing humans I've ever met. And it truly is my running mentor. He taught me everything.
Is he in Utah?
Yeah, lives in Saratoga Springs.
Saratoga Springs.
Yep.
Yeah, all Salt Lake area. That is super cool. So that was the beginning. I mean, the beginning was you started running 3 miles and you eventually stopped hating that. And then you started loving running 6 miles. And then, I mean, when was your first race? Did you do races back in these days, or was it a lot of this adventure run, just going out and having fun with your friends? Like what were you doing more of?
It was a little bit of both. My first official race was a local event in kind of the Utah Valley, Provo area. It was a 10K, and that was the first time I ever met Davy Crockett in person. He just happened to be there. I didn't even know. So I ran a 10K, and then I ran the Salt Lake City half marathon 2 months later. And then a month and a half after that, I ran a 50K around a mountain west of Utah Lake with Davy Crockett. I'd never run over 22 miles at that point. And I'm like, hey, I want to like do my own marathon. And Davy's like, forget a marathon, let's run an ultra. So I did. It was a train wreck. And that was in July of 2009. And in September, I ran the Top of Utah Marathon. It's my first road marathon. It's amazing.
Yeah,
I would love to do it again because it was also my IT band blew up, and so I was like hobbled in the last. I ran what I felt like was quite a good time, all things considered. And then in October of that year, I ran the Pony Express 50-mile race, and I went from essentially 3 miles in a run to 50 miles in a run in 10 months.
10 months.
And then spent the next 2 months injured with a blown up IT band, and this is an interesting thing. I had to learn how to run. And I think what people don't realize in running is it is not just grab a pair of shoes and start clomping around out on the road or a trail. Which you can do, and you will inevitably get hurt. If you want to run and run for years and run really far, there are mechanics involved that you need to learn, practice, and dial in to the point that they become second nature to you. And so I invested about 2 to 3 months of energy into learning how to run properly. And since January of 2010, I've never been injured from running. Ever.
Ooh. So what is it? There's tons of things, I imagine, there's lots of little mechanical things that you can fix with running, but maybe what would some of those main ones be if you were to hone in on a few?
I mean, I'll tell you this, you're going to get if you ask that question to a lot of different people, so-called experts,
okay, about
75% of them will talk about footstrike. Heel strike, midfoot, forefoot. And I'm telling you right now, it doesn't matter. None of your foot strike is irrelevant to your running health. Everything about your running health is from your hips to your shoulders. If your hips are pushed forward and they're in alignment with your back and your shoulders are pulled back and you have good posture, what you're doing at your feet, they'll be fine. So it's hips to shoulders. That's my take.
Proper posture.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And when we get tired, what's the first thing that breaks down? Our posture. We start to slump. We lean over. Right? Our shoulders aren't held back. We start to cave in on our chest. We can't breathe as well. And that's when your hips lock up.
That seems pretty accurate to my long runs. Yeah, that's cool.
So
okay.
In those moments, in those as you prepare for this marathon,
there
will be that moment where you're like, I'm shredded, like I'm done.
Yep.
You're not done, but your body's like, I'm over it. If you focus on your form from your hips to your shoulders, you'll be shocked at how much longer you can push, even at pace.
That is great advice. You'll have to get more into that and other, tips for good running form as well. Footstrike doesn't matter, but I mean, your Garmin, I've got a Garmin watch. It'll measure all sorts of stuff that I don't really know what to do with yet because I haven't put time into it. But does it matter, how much you're pushing off, up? Should I be worried about that if I'm launching myself up into the air more instead of forward? wasting energy in upward motion. Like,
Yeah. So
I don't know if you, yeah.
100%. Like I know everything you're talking about.
Yeah.
If your hips are forward, if your shoulders are back, if you're maintaining a good posture, you will already be in that forward kind of leaning position where your thrust is upwards and forward, no matter what, because your body positioning's right. And so that's where I'm saying it's the key. So when anybody is talking about, maintaining forward momentum or upward thrust, they're really talking about body position and maintaining a good form in running. I once had a guy, because we would back in the day, I was all like, has to be a midfoot or forefoot striker if you want to be a great. Like I was on that bandwagon for a long time, not realizing that it was flawed. And I had a friend who argued with me and he said, well, you can't do that for 100 miles. And I'm like, watch me. and I can do it for 100 miles, like easily. But it's actually, the reason I can do it is because I'm focusing on my hips to my shoulders. And my natural running form is a kind of a more of a midfoot, forefoot strike. But my closest friend and running partner, Scott Wiesman, is a heel striker. And yet, guy's never really been injured either, because he has invested that energy into knowing how to run from hips to shoulders. And we have from the hips down, we're very different. And yet we've both been healthy runners, and he's run 15 plus 100 miles and like mile races and stuff like that too. Yeah. Like the guy's a machine. So
plenty. Awesome. Great advice. Thank you for that. I'm going to have to look more into that, and maybe y'all will too who are listening. So getting back into your story, you did this, this Kings Peak thing. You did a 50K too. Was that your first? That was your first official ultra marathon that you'd run. So let's talk about this. Off the podcast, we were talking about there's adventure running, and you've done a lot of adventure runs in your career. And then there's like official ultra marathon races that are put on by, a person or an organization, and, they do medals and all that stuff, and they have aid stations and whatever. Will you talk about adventure running for a little bit for anyone on this podcast who maybe doesn't know what that specifically means, and maybe talk about a couple of your favorite adventure runs?
So the difference between adventure running and racing is the organizational factor of it. Obviously, there's a lot of races I like doing. I mean, I have a whole plaque full of, medals and finisher buckles behind me. My preference, though, is to just grab a map, pick out cool trails in some national park or, forest service land, the desert, that appeals to me at a distance that I want to run, and I create a route and I go run it. And oftentimes it can be anything from fully supported with a crew vehicle to 100% unsupported, where you're just carrying all of your own food and all of your water, and you have a water filter maybe, and you just kind of head off into the abyss, with a map on your watch or on your phone, and hope you don't get lost, which, is a real thing. And I think there's a couple of things that appeal to me about adventure running.
Over ultra running?
Over racing.
Racing. Okay.
Number one, there isn't the pressure of competition.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound extreme. I don't mean it to be, but the only competition there is not dying.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of cases, in a lot of situations that I've been in, nobody's coming to save me if I get hurt. Or if I'm out there and I break an ankle and I'm alone, search and rescue is not showing up because I don't have cell service. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I could be in the middle of the Wind Rivers or the Sierra Nevada. I could be in the deserts of southern Utah. There's no cell service out there. And even if my wife calls and says, "Oh, my husband is lost," you don't know how long it's going to be. I mean, there's story after story of that. And so I think one of the things that draws me to it is the challenge of doing things. It's a challenge against nature, and a distance at the same time. So you're pushing your body to the limit, running distances that the body isn't overly psyched about doing. And you're doing it in a space that's more interested in killing you than keeping you alive.
Nature. And you'd say
cool.
Yeah, that is cool. That is a cool distinction. Yeah, the lack of aid stations and other people running that could, call for help. Do you usually do these adventure runs solo, or I don't know, how often do you go with a buddy?
Honestly, I probably go with friends more than I go alone. I've done a lot. I've done a lot alone, where I'll literally just pick a route on a map and I'll hop in my car and then drive to the trailhead and run for 8 to 12 hours, and then sleep in my car and then come home the next morning. Like, I've done that more times than I can count. I do prefer going with my friend Scott and or my brother Brent, who is also a great runner. And I don't do it for safety. I do it because I just like hanging out with my friends.
Right. Yeah, it's fun.
And why not share this amazing space that we live in with the people that you really care about? So.
And you typically do these over like on a Saturday, Sunday sort of deal, over a weekend, like because you're working during the week, or?
Yeah. I've been known to day trip, drive for 5 hours to run for 6 hours and then drive home. Like, that's it's not a smart thing, but I've done it. Cause I've got a family, I've got a wife and 4 kids. I've got a full-time job. I manage a social media platform of thousands of people, and life's busy. And
I'm trying to think, how do you do this? How do you get the time to go travel to other states even and do these runs? But I mean, if you cram it in a weekend and a Saturday, Sunday, like, you can make it happen, I guess.
Yeah, it's really just about what do you want to accomplish and how are you going to pull it off. It's not, I work for a very small company. There's only 4 of us in the whole company. We're a consulting firm. And so if I want to plan an adventure run that requires me to drive to Colorado or California or Wyoming, it's really easy for me to just take a Friday off. I just plan it in advance because I manage my own schedule. And then, I grab 1 or 2 people that I want to go with, and we hop in the car on a Thursday night and we pull up to whatever camp spot we're going to hunker down in for the next 4 hours. And then we start running on Friday morning after like 4 hours of sleep. And
oh my goodness.
And sometimes we run from Friday to Saturday. So it's, and then you're home Saturday night so that you can have a day with the family before you got to get back to work and things like that.
Yeah.
It's just how we operate. I had this dream for a long time, of climbing Mount Rainier. Which is amazing. Mount Rainier's iconic mountain. And
Washington.
Yeah. And I've always wanted to climb Mount Hood and all of these like cool things. And 3 years ago, my friend Sam and my friend Scott, we got together and we were like, what's a cool adventure we could do? And they're like, well, let's go climb Mount Rainier. And then, of course, as guys often do, I won't even say guys, as people often do, as adventurers often do.
Yeah, there you go.
It's not a gender thing at all. It's just adventurers often do. They they get together, and then all of a sudden this singular idea explodes. And we were like, well, great, you know what? Hey, let's do this. Let's go knock out Rainier in a day instead of the normal 2 to 3 days. Let's do Rainier in a day. We'll hop in the car. We'll drive down to Mount Adams. We'll climb Mount Adams. And then we'll immediately get in the car and we'll drive down and do Mount Hood. And let's go climb 3 of the most iconic volcanoes in the Pacific Northwest in 4 days. Ooh. Yeah, okay, let's try it. So we were away from home for 5 days total. And we pulled it off. We climbed 3 of the most iconic volcanoes in the Pacific Northwest in 4 days.
That is
we had to put a travel day in there from Rainier to Adams. We needed a travel day, but other than that, we went back to back. And so it's just that's kind of how this whole idea of adventure running comes up. It's some are very fixed. The most common one that resonates with people is rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon.
Yes, I've heard of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that's it's iconic. It's amazing. Shockingly, I've never done it. Because I can't seem to drive past Zion. I love Zion National Park. It's my favorite place on the planet. And I'm like driving. I'm like, squirrel. There's Zion. I'm just going to go run 50 miles to Zion instead.
Yeah.
So, I've hiked the Grand Canyon years ago, but I've never done the rim to rim to rim run.
How long is rim to rim?
It's either 42 or 48 miles, depending on which route you take. But here's what differentiates rim to rim to rim is an iconic, amazing adventure run. It's very challenging. You end, no matter where you start, when you cross the canyon and come back, you're ending with a 4,000 foot climb. Doesn't matter how.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and it's hard
getting out of the canyon.
However, there's water everywhere, piped water. Like you don't even need to take a filter if you don't want to the Grand Canyon. And in the bottom of it, if you time it right, you get to Phantom Ranch and you can buy a lemonade and snacks. And you can get to, the South Rim and there's a hotel with a restaurant. If you want to take, add an hour, you can just eat at a restaurant and then cruise back across. And so it's amazing. Like, I don't want to take anything away from how amazing it is, but it's in some ways kind of an introductory level into adventure running because there's so many ways to, number one, stay safe, stay hydrated, stay fed. And then when you've done that, it's kind of easier to say, well, now I'm going to go tackle something more challenging where there's less, maybe there isn't as much water or there isn't that support. You get caught in the backcountry of Zion. If you're on like the West Rim Trail out by Potato Hollow and you run out of water, like nobody's coming to help you and there's nowhere to fill up. It's the desert. You're cooked. And so there's just that differentiation and it takes practice and time and learning to figure out how to do it right.
Yeah. That's a cool trail too. What's the 50-mile trail called in Zion's?
So they call it the Zion Traverse.
Yes, that one. Yeah.
So the Zion Traverse, I should clarify, no longer exists in its original form. In 2018, I believe, Rockfall took out the East Rim Trail at Weeping Rock, which then they had more Rockfall just this year.
Yeah, I saw that.
They have no intention of ever repairing it until all of the rock has fallen, because national parks' approach is we don't force it. Nature's going to do its thing. We're simply here to bear witness to it and to respect it. And until the remaining features of rock that are loosely hanging up there fall naturally, they're not going to rebuild the trail. So the Zion Traverse that exists today in its current form is 37 miles instead of 49 and a half.
Yeah.
But I've done in one form or another, I've done the full 50 mile Zion Traverse 9 times.
Wow. That's fun. Man, I think it'd be really fun to do these with a buddy. Like I'm thinking, scouring my brain right now, like what other insane person lives near me, or what can I get to go with me to do some of this fun stuff? It
Yeah,
seems
I mean,
really fun.
I feel very lucky because I can, um, I could count on two hands. I could call any one of 10 people right now, and they would join me on something like the Zion Traverse.
I just gotta hit your Facebook group.
Do it. There's people, they plan fun runs down to Zion. They plan like group runs down there. We used to do it where we would go. I've done this a number of times, where there would be two groups of us, and we would start on opposite ends of the park at the same time, and we would pass each other, trade keys, car keys, and then you would go out, drive the other person's car around, and we'd meet at Oscar's in Springdale, and we'd eat burgers and reminisce about our adventures. Done that a few times.
That is so fun.
Yeah.
I love the ideas and the adventure that you're sharing here. Hopefully this is getting other people's cogs turning too. Like, what other fun things that I could just come up with myself and just do, and not limit it to a race.
It's worth adding this. It doesn't have to be some grand 50-mile, 100-mile adventure. It can be, maybe you had planned to go do a half marathon at Disneyland, and for some reason running with 5,000 other people isn't appealing to you right then. Cool. You can go map out I could come up with a 13-mile route in Bryce Canyon National Park in a heartbeat. You get your half marathon, but you're also seeing one of the most spectacular places on earth. And it doesn't involve a mouse. At least not the kind that they have there.
Yeah. Yeah, just little desert mice, yeah.
Sometimes adventure running is just it's a trail run that becomes an adventure because it's someplace exotic and new.
Yeah.
And I think there's value in recognizing that can be just as fulfilling as doing something that, like, maybe nobody's ever done before or is 100 miles long. It doesn't have to be that. It can be 20 miles. It's just, if it's an adventure for you, it's an adventure run.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, even in ultra running, for me, it's about racing myself. But even then, it's about completing it, and it's sort of about completing something, doing like the challenge. I don't know, but it seems like not ultra, but adventure running, the purpose is solely the adventure and the fun of it, which I think is really fun and intriguing. It just takes all that pressure off of it, and it's just a fun way to get in the mountains, which I think is why we all do ultra running anyways. We all love getting in the mountains. So let's just take the competition out of it. I think it's fun to have both. I mean, it's good to have both because it's fun to push yourself and do something hard where there's other people, but also just have those times where there's no pressure and just go have fun.
Yeah. I mean, and there's certain adventure runs that there is also that time aspect. I mean, that's why FKTs, fastest known times, is such a hot thing and has been for the last 5 or so years.
Yeah.
And it's people who are doing adventure runs, but they're tackling the fastest times out there. So it has the competitive nature of a race, but it has the adventurous spirit of an adventure run.
Yeah. What does FKT stand for?
Fastest known time.
Okay. I have.
So there's two terms: fastest known time and FKT, and OKT, only known time. So if you're a person who has done something that nobody else has ever done, it's an OKT, until somebody comes and does it, and then it becomes an FKT.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I've heard of someone running the like tallest, I don't know, 14ers or something in Colorado, or the highest 14ers in Colorado in like 2 days. Like there's some crazy stuff out there.
Yeah.
Like,
They're everywhere.
yeah.
There's a website called Fastest Known Time, and
Okay.
it's a record of every currently recorded route that has a notable time associated with it. So like the one, there's an FKT for all of the Colorado 14ers. There's an FKT for all of the California 14ers. There's now an FKT for all of the Utah 13ers.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, for anybody out there listening to this who wants to do, like, the California and Colorado 14ers are cool, but they don't compare to the Utah 13ers. And the reason is there's the Utah 13ers are all connected. There's 21 of them. They're all connected in a single ridge line and not one of those peaks is within 10 miles of a road or a trailhead. It is the most remote, extreme adventure. There's only been 4 people who have ever done it. And it's, so there's FKTs for everything all over the place.
Are you one of those 4 people, Craig?
I am not.
Okay.
I will tell you this, the idea to do it, I will say, I think I was one of the first people to come up with the idea. And I attempted it, and the partner I was doing it with got altitude sick, and we had to bail. And I posted that on a website, I think. And then these 2 other people, actually brothers, the Duray brothers, who are animals, went out and they were like, wow, that sounds really cool. And they actually contacted me and were like, hey, do you mind if we try it? And I'm like, no, go nuts. Like, somebody needs to do this. And they crushed it. It's brutal. It took them like 63 hours or something.
Oh my God.
Maybe not. Maybe it was like 38 hours. It's a long time. It's a
either way
wildly difficult route.
Yeah. Craig, what I want to hear about a specific adventure run of yours. You've had lots, and I'm making you pick one, but I need to hear about a fun, interesting story regarding one of your adventure runs.
There's a bunch I could pick.
I'll give you a sec.
I think I'm gonna pick the one. This is the most. This sounds weird. This is a very tame adventure run because we had a full crew car supporting us.
Okay.
But I would say maybe my one of my favorite adventure runs was just a couple of years ago. My brother, for his 50th birthday, wanted to run a 100-mile race, his only one he had ever attempted. And so, and he doesn't like racing at all. So I said, sweet, let's go do the White Rim in Canyonlands National Park. It is a 100-mile route. That's a Jeep trail that circumnavigates the Island in the Sky district of Canyonlands. I had run it a few years before, so I was familiar with the route. We had and so it was my brother and I and our friend Scott, who I've already mentioned. And we were crewed by my mom and stepdad. And so it was just this like really cool experience. It was hard. It was not the best weather. It was really windy. We had to push through a lot of like tough, just physical challenges of feeling sick and dehydrated, your typical 100-mile stuff. But being able to finish that with my brother, and having my stepdad there with my mom to crew us. This was in May, and my stepdad passed away suddenly in September, just a few months later. And
Wow.
so if I think about like my favorite adventure run, that probably qualifies as the one that stands out the most, just because it's something I got to do with my brother, who's my best friend and somebody I'm closest to in this world. And it's also an experience I got to share with my stepdad before he passed away. And so that that one has probably the most meaning for me of any that I've done.
That is really cool. It's cool that your brother will run with you too. You got family going with you.
Yeah, I don't like talking about him because like now he's like a better runner than me. At least up to like 50K, he's better than me, and he's older, and it just bugs me now. So if you want, we can trash talk him for a while. That I'm fine.
This is your older brother?
Yeah. He's like a year and a half older.
Oh shoot, the rivalry.
Yeah, he's actually at a shorter distance. Anything from like 50K down, he's faster than me for sure.
Yeah.
I just know how to suffer longer.
Yeah. It's different. It's way different what it takes to get to those shorter marathon. 50K is still long, but shorter long distance runs versus like 100-miler. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. Marathons are hard. You're out there to run fast. The whole point. And that alone makes it incredibly difficult. And so, I don't care if I've run a bunch of 100-milers or not. I still have so much respect for anybody who runs the marathon distance, because that's a whole level of suffering that you don't experience in a 100-mile race, for at least for those of us who aren't racing at the front, the top. You
right.
Tend to take a much more casual approach.
Yeah, there's that pressure. My Garmin says, let me look right now. It'll tell me what it thinks I should run my marathon in 2 weeks. It tells me how fast it thinks I should go.
What's it telling you?
Let's see. Okay. Sun Marathon. It thinks I could run it in 3 hours and 52 minutes, which is just under like a 9-minute mile consistently, I think. Probably like 850. I don't know. But doing that for 26 miles is long. It's long. I did my 18-miler trying to run a similar pace. My 18-mile training run for this race, and man, it was exhausting. I didn't fuel as well as I could have, so I think if I fuel better, I could probably feel better after. Maybe feel good enough to finish the marathon at that pace. But yeah, I don't know. But I really just, since this is my first marathon, I kind of I'm battling between like trying to do this, like, yeah, get under a 4-hour marathon, or just doing it to say I did my first marathon and not care. I don't know what advice would you give me, Craig? Tell me what to do.
I'm gonna make so many enemies when I say I'm gonna make so many enemies when I say this, because there's nothing I like hearing less in the running world. So this is what I like hearing the least.
Okay.
When people say my goal is to just finish.
Okay.
It's BS. No, it's not. That's not your goal. Your goal isn't to finish. It's an assumed outcome. That's the whole purpose you signed up. If you didn't think you could finish, if you didn't have signed up. So finishing isn't a goal, it's an expectation. It's the whole reason you're there. So the goal has to be something else. The goal is something that pushes us, that motivates us to train. When I ran my first 100-miler, my goal wasn't to finish 100 miles. I knew from the moment I signed up for that race, I would run 100 miles. It never crossed my mind that I couldn't or wouldn't. I always had a time in mind that I wanted to accomplish. Whether I hit the time or not wasn't as relevant as some people make it out to be. And so I have a hard time when people are like, I just want to finish. No, screw that. That's an expectation. You are going to finish. Your marathon at Sun will be just fine. You will finish the race. So go ahead and set the time goal for yourself. Put it at 3 hours and 59 minutes. Why not? Shoot for the stars. And if you blow up, walk it in at 4:30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fair point. Like, I haven't run a marathon before, but if if the worst happened and I hit some crazy wall after running 8-minute 50 miles and I hit this crazy wall at 20 miles, yeah, the worst is I still walk it in unless I like totally injure myself, but probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's exceptions, right? Like you injure yourself, that's an exception that's understandable.
Yeah,
yeah. Here's the one thing you have to understand. You're going to hit a wall. The
Right.
wall will happen. The question is what are you going to do when you hit the wall? Because I don't walk it in, period. I can't, like walking to me is just more painful than a slow trot. With, with walking breaks. Walking breaks are fine. But like, I mean, I have friends who are like, I walked the last 6 miles in my marathon. No, if I have to walk the last 6 miles of my marathon, I'm going home. Like I didn't show up here to walk. And so I will shuffle, I will crawl, but for some reason I'm like, I'm not going to walk for 6 miles. So, walk for a half mile and run for a half mile. And like, that's fine. All of it's fine. I don't care what there was a guy who went on a lecture tour for years that had a philosophy that he said you could do a run walk combination and do a sub-4 marathon. And that included walking frequently. I'm serious.
And is he running 6-minute miles and then walking?
Well, I mean, you'd be surprised. Like think about it. Let's say you're running an 8:30 pace for 3/4 of a mile, and then you walk at a 16-minute pace for a quarter mile. You're only losing about a minute and a half, maybe like per mile because of the time of the walking.
Yeah,
because you're only going to be walking for maybe 6 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I mean, not even that. You're probably going to walk less. You're probably going to be less than that. A quarter mile, you're maybe going to be walking for like 4 minutes. Right. And so it just doesn't like it work. I've never tested the philosophy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
do
like,
the math. I mean,
yeah, you're going to hit the wall. So just know what's going to happen. And then you figure out how are you going to adapt. Either you can suffer and just keep pushing and maybe that risks an injury, or maybe it just sucks. You just got to like get into the pain cave and enjoy the ride. We all do it, whether you're a 2.5 hour marathon or a 6 hour marathoner. Everybody has the same experience, and they're all equally respectable.
You're right. It just matters what you do with it. Well, I'll let you know what I do.
Oh yeah,
I'll try. I'll try sub-4. Let's go.
I mean, look, I'm not telling you to run a sub-4.
You did.
I'm not like, if you want to run a 4:15 or a 4:30,
Craig made me.
That's your thing. But I'm telling you right now, if your watch is telling you can run a 3:58, I'm telling you can run like a 3:50.
Yeah. It said 3:52. So, let's not push it, Craig.
Why not?
I'm just going to
run a 3:52.
No, yeah. If I can get under 4, that'd be incredible for a first marathon, especially. But we'll see. It's downhill. I mean, I feel like there's no excuse because I run uphill most of the time for my training runs. They're not super steep, but it's usually a steady uphill, and I usually run 10-minute 30 miles. So it's like, well, if I'm running downhill the entire time, I could probably do it 9-minute miles.
Well, and you're also going to be 2,000 feet lower.
That's a good point. I'm trying to figure out how to do the aid stations though, because that means I need to run a little bit faster so that I could stop a time or two to probably get some more water around halfway. Water, and definitely need to stop every once in a while to take some energy of some sort. Yeah, I'll figure it out. Make it happen.
Probably something you want to have dialed in.
Yeah, but probably. I typically take a gel every 30 minutes, so that's what I'll stick to.
That's good move.
Cool. Thanks for the advice, Craig.
Sure.
I think that's a worthy and cool take. You're right. If we sign up for a race, we obviously in our brains expect that we could do it. That
Not
we probably
could.
could do it.
Will.
That we will.
You just will. You're going to finish. I mean, barring an injury, barring some, astronomical weather event or something, like you're going to finish. That's why you signed up. I mean, I don't buy a movie ticket to walk out with 15 minutes left. I did that recently. It was the saddest thing I ever had to do. Took my boys to go see the Taylor Swift Eras Tour concert movie, and I had to leave early to take my son to a birthday party, and I wanted to cry because that was amazing. I'm not going to do that at a race.
Like, then why did you leave? Okay. Birthday party.
It wasn't my choice. I didn't want to leave.
Happens.
But I wasn't going to make my son walk. So, yeah.
Great comparison. Oh, Craig, I'm going to have to ask you another question or two. Some final words of wisdom, maybe. There's going to be, a handful of folks on here that are pretty new to maybe running in general or new to running really long distances in here. I'm curious if you were to pick like one tip, one advice to impart upon those people that are just thinking about getting into this, and what would you tell them?
Oh, that's a good question. There's so many different ways I could take this. I'm going to say, I'm gonna go with this one because this is one that has kept me in the sport and being in love with it for as long as I have. Spend the time and energy learning and understanding what motivates and drives you to be out there. And I say it, and this is why I say that. I've spent months and years understanding what my own core values are. One of them is, and you'll notice that I don't believe values can be embodied in a single word. So you'll find that my values are statements. One of my values is that my mental and emotional health is tied to physical activity. So being a 51-year-old guy who has a full-time job, full-time family, etc., if I want to make sure that my mental and emotional health is intact, I have to be actively engaged on a daily basis. And sometimes that looks a lot like doing some push-ups and going for a 10-minute walk. And sometimes that is, skiing for, backcountry skiing for a couple of hours and going for a 10-mile run. Like it's different. So that's the first value. The other value is that my spirituality is embedded in nature. And so when I'm outside and I'm doing those things that keep my mind and body healthy, I'm also feeding my soul because I'm doing it in a space that connects me with my own spirituality, which is why I don't do well going to like a fitness gym. I have nothing against fitness gyms. I have nothing against them. I just can't do it because I'm in a box. And what I would rather do is in fact, I do this frequently. I'll go for a 4-mile run and I'll stop every mile and do 25 push-ups. Because I get a workout, I get like a strength workout, and I get my running workout, and I'm out in nature being outside. And so when I'm actively engaged in those two core values, which have so much crossover, all of a sudden the understanding of like, why do you run 100 miles? Why do you do adventure runs? Why do you do all of these, skiing and rock climbing and mountain biking? Well, it's an easy answer. It's because it validates the core, at my absolute core, who I am as an individual. So motivation's never an issue for me because it's not what I want to achieve. It's what my body and soul needs to survive. And if it wasn't running, if I couldn't run tomorrow, I would find something else. Mm-hmm. Right? I could row a boat as long as I'm in nature and I'm staying physically active. That's me. Find what motivates you.
Thank you, Craig. I think that was my favorite thing. I mean, first, before I say something funny, that was really good advice. Thank you. And the funny thing is, I loved picturing you doing push-ups in the middle of a run. That was awesome. That was my favorite.
Yeah, well,
that was my
it looks a little weird to the other people who are walking dogs out there, or I did it at the top of a trail. I was running a trail in Corner Canyon, a local trail by my house. And I stopped and I did 25 push-ups on top of a picnic table at this trailhead. 2 mountain bikers came around the corner and they must have thought I was a complete moron. They're probably right.
Yeah. I love that though, because I am the same way. I do not like the gym. A lot of people listening to this will probably relate. They want to get outside. But that's a great way to get in some strength training. So that was great advice. Okay. Cool, Craig. Thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing your stories and all about your adventure runs. And I learned a lot, and hope a lot of y'all learned as well. Also, before we end, if you want to follow Craig, he's on the social medias, and he also has the Trail and Ultra Running Facebook group. He actually started that Facebook group probably, I think you said around 250,000 members. Is that right? Yeah, that's amazing. So you can catch him on there and lots of other awesome outdoor enthusiasts. But you also have these other social channels. Do you want to share them, or maybe? I
can. Look, I'm not as invested in social media as I used to. But if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm Ultra Craig 32. And I also have a fairly active YouTube channel called Trail and Ultra Running. So, and you can see all the antics and lots of adventure runs on there. If you want to understand more about adventure running, there will be plenty on that YouTube channel.
Well, you best know I'll be on there. Hope you all will too. And thanks again, Craig. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your time.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
Hey, Brendan here. I just wanted to thank you for listening to today's episode. As someone new to ultra running myself, I found these conversations to be super valuable, and I hope they are for you as well. And if you want to know when the next podcast episode comes out, make sure you subscribe to the show. Also, some exciting news. The Ordinary to Ultra Facebook group is live. This is a great place to meet other aspiring, new, and experienced ultra runners and have any questions you have answered, get some advice, maybe find a running buddy that's local or maybe virtual. And it's just a great place to make connections with other psychos that like to run way too much. The link is in the description of this episode if you want to go join that Facebook group and make some awesome connections. And that is all. Thanks again for joining me today, and we'll catch you in the next episode.